Hello everyone, today in this video we will fight against the advanced character of our world around us, and today we will refer to recent events, relatively very recent events. 3 days ago in local elections, party of protests, I would say party of farmers and Dutch farmers supporters won the elections, which is actually in my opinion a reason to be very happy, and I hope this will be the beginning of the snowball that will crush this all pseudo eco idiocy, this all green plan for so-called in quotation new energy sources and in quotation eco-friendly energy sources. How can they be eco-friendly if we will exploit more and more and excavate the resources with heavy metals and use more and more battery? Efficacy of the systems is debatable. Actually, it's much lower than the ones which are based on fossil fuels, and already by introducing these regulations in many countries and states of some other states that also fall into this pitfall of really doubtful business connections of some people and stupid ideology of leftist neo-Marxism are actually experiencing extreme increase of the energy costs in a very short time. Now we see that people start to slowly opening their eyes, and they are taking some actions, because now Netherlands, if they continue like this with these pseudo reforms, there are second candidates for being another Sri Lanka. We know country fall down, completely collapsed, economy became broken because country introduced the government introduced in this country very insane regulations that usage of fertilizers was practically forbidden. So of course Sri Lanka, being a country in which agriculture was the one of the main sources of its income, it's not a surprise that this country completely collapsed and fall into the darkness of riots, corruption, and crime, organized and small and big one. Entire country is one big mess, really not safe, and actually still undergoing the decomposition process. And if it continues, Netherlands is another candidate for being another Sri Lanka. But luckily, Dutch people in last year, what I also mentioned on my channel as well, and many people also mentioned, started to organize themselves to oppose insane policy of the government that has one goal: liquidation of the free farmers. And I would say, what's that? Practically, it's without calling this process by its name. It's another attempt of collectivization of the countryside. Introduction of this time green communism. From the case of Soviet Union to 1920s, 1930s, and China 1960s, we can learn what were the results of the collectivization when it really happened. Poverty, famine, and collapse of the economy. And now I see that Dutch people finally woke up and they fight for their rights by any possible means, like open protests, like elections, and we will see how it will go further. Because from this, what I noticed, corrupted politicians and people from corporations that support them and leftist ideologies do not want to step down, and farmers do not want to step down. So one thing is for sure, this conflict will develop further. But let's call it by its name. All of these 15-minute cities, what I also commented on in one of my movies, it's nothing more than, without calling this by its name, is an attempt to introduce internal passports for citizens to go from one administrative unit of the country to another. That you need a permission. So what's the permission? it's nothing else than the internal passports, like the one that were that were enjoyed in quotation by the citizens of Soviet Union who, without this special permission, so internal passports, were not able to travel from one oblast to another, from one Soviet republic to another. And the same thing still to some extent functions in China, because to visit Tibet or Inner Mongolia or Kashgar, called also like Tarkim Basim, you need to have permission from, of course, communistic caciques, so communistic authorities, to go there. As a Chinese citizen, and from my experience, I know as a foreigner visiting China, if you apply for Chinese visa, you have in general permission to travel around China with the exception of these three provinces, so Inner Mongolia, Tibet, and Kashgar. To visit them, you need to have special permission from proper party officials, so-called caciques, as I call them, because this word really resembles perfectly their function they have within the society and the party. So we see that now in Europe we uh, experience an attempt now in case of Netherlands of performing the collectivization of Dutch farms, and actually making Dutch farmers bankrupt, and giving and taking away their lands from them. I will not use special wording for this, because this is the only one name for this what's happening. It's an attempt of collectivization. The same like it was done in 1920s and 30s in Soviet Union and in 60s in China. And if it, I hope not, if the ones who want to do it, so corrupted government and different corporations that would like to sell us the food, for instance, out of insects, we not necessarily want to eat, if they succeed, the result will be exactly the same as it was in case of China and Soviet Union: poverty, hunger, and complete collapse of economy. Luckily, Dutch farmers are now much more aware of their own interests, and we see that after these 2 years of madhouse we had with small Chinese friend, now over 1 year of madhouse with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, that surprisingly was noticed by media only now, despite the fact it started in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and slow decomposition of eastern part of Ukraine. After these two madnesses, now we have a third madness, so attempt of collectivization of the farmlands, now in Netherlands, and luckily Dutch farmers oppose, and a huge part of Dutch society supports them. We should also support them, spread this information. What really is, it's an attempt of collectivization. So the land from the farmers, the plan is to take away the land from the farmers, completely monopolize the production of food, and terrorize, if needed, for the governments and corporations, people with artificially induced famine, and if needed, even reduce them by this, like Stalin did in Ukraine from 1921 to 1933. So we have all lessons from history, and also China Mao Zedong in 60s. So we need to only look back not so long ago even, to envision what socialist madhouse can bring to us. That's why we should oppose by any means, spread the real knowledge, what are the real plans of our pseudo elites, and oppose them, because these are the same communists as the ones who were in Soviet Union and China. These people think in the same way, and socialism, as history showed many times, will never work. It will always be a disaster. Have a nice day, all the best, bye.